Well, the Commanders have a huge offseason in front of them, headlined by a $90 million decision. Al Harris is in high demand, and why is this player, who could have been a top target for the Commanders in free agency, potentially heading to retirement? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Full Command Show. My name is Grant Mitchell, back with you all here on this Friday morning to talk about another batch of storylines involving and related to the Commanders. Some really fun ones in this one. Like I said, $90 million decision, a top target who's only 27 years old, who might be retiring, coaching updates, mock draft stuff. It's all coming in the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. Before we jump into that, though, I just want to say, everybody on the East Coast, I hope that you guys are prepared. I know where I live, we're supposed to get 20 to 24 inches of snow on Sunday alone. I don't think I've ever seen 2 feet of snow in one day. I was here when we got like 3 feet of snow over the course of a few days, but I just can't even conceptualize how the area is going to transform that quickly. But if you are in any place really on the east, not even the East Coast, just like east of the halfway point of the country, I hope that you're stocked up. Make sure you go to the grocery store if you haven't already been. The earlier you can go, probably the better. I would assume there's going to be a run. Get yourself some food, some non-perishables, bottles of water, paper towels, toilet paper, all that great stuff. Make sure that you are prepared. If I do end up losing power this weekend, obviously you guys are not going to be getting any videos. And if you don't see any, well, I lost power. So you have an explanation right now. But anyway, guys, you didn't come here for meteorology. You came here for the drama, for the news, for the Commanders. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Before we do, though, make sure that you do have the like and the hype buttons pressed. That's the number one way you can support me here on the channel. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. We are climbing every single day. And as always, make sure you throw your thoughts in the comment section below. This is going to be a controversial video with a lot of divisive topics. I know there are a lot of perspectives out there, and I want to hear all of them. So make sure you throw your thoughts down below. Let's start this off with the general league news. The Baltimore Ravens officially hired Jesse Minter from the Los Angeles Chargers. That means the Chargers now need a defensive coordinator. Again, I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to end up in Baltimore as their OC, but the bigger news is there's more competition for the DC, or in the DC market. And when I say DC, I mean defensive coordinator, not Washington, DC. The Cowboys hired the Eagles' defensive backs coach and passing game coordinator, Christian Parker, who is somebody that I think is going to prove to be a very good coach in this league. Now, this obviously helps Dallas, or at least it should help Dallas quite a bit, and it's going to hurt the Eagles. So it would have been better if he was moving outside of the division and not to our top rivals. But while Dallas is our top historical rivals, Philly is more of our top current rivals just because they are a better football team. So it raises Dallas and it lowers Philly, which means there's less of a top power, but more competition within the division. So we'll see what effect that has. And then Al Harris, who we found out just the other day, the Commanders wanted to interview and set up an interview with. Al Harris is now scheduled to interview with the Titans on Saturday. Now, this is interesting because, why can't I think of his name? Robert Saleh was just hired to be the Titans head coach coming over from San Francisco. He's a defensive guy. He will presumably be calling plays. So Al Harris would be interviewing for a job where, again, nothing confirmed, but he's probably not going to be calling plays. I saw a conversation on Twitter. Does that mean he's interviewing in DC and Dan Quinn wants to call plays? My response to that is no. That does not mean that, because Al Harris also interviewed for the Packers job where Matt LaFleur is the head coach, and Matt LaFleur is an offensive guy. Matt LaFleur is not calling defensive plays. So just because he did that interview, and that's the situation down there in Tennessee, doesn't mean that's what's happening in Washington, D.C. I think Al Harris has never been a defensive coordinator before, so he's taking all the interviews he can, at the very least banking some experience, and just keeping his options open and in front of him. That's the way that I see it. Let's move over to that top target in free agency that I was talking about. We're going to talk about Mr. Brandon Aiyuk. As many Commanders fans know, Brandon Aiyuk is someone who's been heavily linked to come to the Commanders. He essentially forced his way out of town, out of San Francisco. General Manager John Lynch down there said the other day that he thinks it's a fair assumption that Aiyuk has played his last snap with the 49ers. We know that Aiyuk and Jaden Daniels are very close, going back to their time at Arizona State, and that's a big reason why Aiyuk has been linked here. Well, I'm going to read you a tweet from Sports Illustrated's Grant Cohn, who is a great 49ers reporter, a guy who I think does a phenomenal job and I have a lot of respect for. His tweet says, "It sounds like Brandon Aiyuk didn't just quit the 49ers. It sounds like he quit football entirely. Doesn't it?" I have no clue. I personally don't. I'm going to trust the guy who covers the 49ers for a living and is very good at it. I'm going to trust his evaluation on this more than mine. But it's an interesting thought because who knows where Aiyuk's really at in his rehab process. I'm sure he's walking and running, but when he left, he was a top 10 receiver in the NFL. After such a major knee injury and missing 2 seasons, basically, can he come back and be that same guy? A lot of players recover from injuries. Modern medicine is great, but sometimes players just don't. And this was a pretty major knee injury. So what if he's just not the same? Or what if the rehab process took it out of him mentally? Or what if his priorities have shifted? Who really knows? I still think Aiyuk will be playing football next year, but this is at least an indication that maybe his head's not all the way there. I'll keep you up to date on this if there is more, but it caught me off guard and I wanted to put it in front of you guys. Okay, let's get to the $90 million decision, which also relates to free agency to a certain extent. Daron Payne is entering the final year of his deal with the Commanders. He has a $28 million cap hit coming up in 2026. That is the largest on the team. Now, I want to emphasize this. He is entering the final year of his deal. He will not be a free agent this coming offseason, but the one after he will be. So here are the options. You just bring him back on the team, and that's it. See you in summer, Daron. If you cut or trade him before June 1st, the team would save $16.8 million against the cap, leaving an $11.2 million dead cap hit. Payne is a very interesting player to evaluate, not just him for himself, where does he stack up, what's he got in the back end of his career, not that he's in it, but he's 28, so he's looking to get one final big payday. But specifically, what does he mean to the Commanders? What should they want to do with him? So Pro Football Focus's grades are not everything, but they said that this was the second worst year of his career. The worst year was last year. The 3 sacks he had this season were also the fewest that he's had since 2020. Now, interestingly, ESPN's run-stop win rate had him ranked 5th highest among all defensive tackles. Both him and Javon Kinlaw were actually in the top 10, despite how bad the Commanders' run defense was, which really is an indictment on so many things. I didn't feel, just watching live and going back and watching the All-22, I didn't feel like Payne was a dominating run defender, but I'm also only human, and that's what the numbers say, so you have to trust them to a certain extent. The big question here is, what route do the Commanders choose to go down? You could cut him, you could trade him, you could restructure his deal, but the one option that to me is probably off the table, I don't just see them keeping everything status quo. Same contract, roll it over to next season, get the helmet on, and let's go play football. I just don't think that's going to happen. So let's explore these options one by one. Cut Daron Payne. The NFL knew last season, and when I say the NFL, I mean coaches and GMs, the NFL knew the Commanders didn't want Jonathan Allen on the team the next season, which would have been the one that we just finished, right? So they waited until the Commanders essentially had to let him go, and once they did that, he was very quickly signed by the Minnesota Vikings. They knew that they were going to have the chance to go sign him, so why would we give up a draft pick when we know you don't want him around? That's the cut him option. Is Daron Payne in a similar situation? Are opposing GMs and coaches looking at this saying, the Commanders have all this cap space, they're going to cut Marshawn Lattimore and get another 18, they could cut Daron Payne and get another 16, and then go really all in on some big money names. So we know that that's going to happen, or we're confident that's going to happen. We're just going to wait until they cut him, and then we'll sign him. That's one option. Another one is the trade him option. Payne's value right now is what? Probably a 4th? maybe even a fifth when you factor in the fact that he is entering the final year of his deal. Would it be like a sign and trade where you trade him, or I guess a trade and sign, where you trade him and part of that is an agreement that an extension is coming? Is paying the $11.2 million against the cap, the dead cap hit, worth it to the Commanders to only get a fourth or even a fifth round draft pick, especially with the lack of depth that they have at the position? And then the restructuring option. It means you're committing to him to a certain extent, only for one more year. You're having him back on your team, probably knowing you're not re-signing him in the future, which means you won't get compensation for him when his contract expires like you would in a trade, right? I'll go back to the Brian Robinson Jr. trade, which I've referenced numerous times, but that trade happened because the Commanders knew they did not want to pay what he would have asked for in free agency, so they would have let him walk for nothing. So they got ahead of it, and they got a 6th round draft pick back for him. So you can keep paying because you have so many deficiencies on the roster, but then you're not getting anything back for him once he leaves at the end of the season. My take on this is finding a good trade should be the top priority. Any old trade, trading him just to trade him, is a no. Because the team is so thin on depth and has so few starting level players that you can't afford to deplete yourself even further. Now, the exception to this is if the front office has plans, or eventually does when free agency opens, they have plans to spend a lot of money at the defensive tackle position. Because if they're going to do that, then having that cap space and that flexibility, getting off of Daron Payne, it would be beneficial to the team. Plus, you could get the draft pick compensation back in it. If it's only a 4th or a 5th, okay, it is what it is. Personally, when I say they should be hunting for a good trade, I don't know who would do it, but if someone's willing to offer a 3rd, by all means. If there's player for player or player and pick for player and pick, something like that, okay, go ahead and explore that. But I wouldn't do it just to do it again, unless there's the caveat of the team is going to invest big money in a different defensive tackle in free agency. This is a lot of money. It's a very big question with very influential repercussions. So I want to know, what would you guys do? Make sure that you let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Our final topic of this video, we got our first mock draft from Mel Kiper Jr., the godfather of mock drafts himself, the man who invented an entire profession where there's no problem with being wrong the majority of the time. But nonetheless, it's still cool to look at where he's got the top guys. Because, look, by pick 57, nobody's got any idea what's going to happen because so many people are going to be off the board, but there's going to be so many people left. You can somewhat predict the top 20 or so before things start to go awry. And the Commanders are picking at 7, so that should put them in a spot where it's going to be relatively easy to predict who is going to go to them. Now, that could be multiple players because we're tracking. It's a foregone conclusion they're drafting one of the top defensive guys or one of the top receivers. They don't need a quarterback. I guess I could add Jeremiah Love into that mix as well, but it's a foregone conclusion. They don't need a quarterback. They don't need an offensive tackle, right? So you can rule out some positions. Mel Kiper has the Commanders taking Reuben Bain at 7. Now, here are my thoughts on Bain, and I want to emphasize this. I'm still going through, I have opinions. I'm still formulating my final verdicts on players in the draft process. My thoughts on Bain right now. The 9.5 sacks he had this season, it's certainly good. It's not the 14.5 that David Bailey had in fewer games. Bain did generate 83 pressures to Bailey's 81. However, it took him 170 more pass rushing reps to do that. With that being said, PFF did have Bain having a higher percentage of pass rush wins and the second highest percentage of pass rush wins among all edges in P4. Flipping that on its head, while people think that Reuben Bain has the advantage against the run and David Bailey might have the advantage against the pass, Reuben Bain's 6.9% run stop win rate was actually much lower than David Bailey's 9%, which was 13th among all P4 edges. Bailey also missed a lower percentage of tackles than Reuben Bain did. So taking numbers out of it and just talking about what do my eyes tell me. The difference, the primary difference between the two is how they impact the run. So Bain is more likely to destroy a gap and get a hand on a running back and slow him down, or reroute the running back, or open up a hole for a linebacker, a corner, or safety, someone to come down and fit the run and make the tackle. Bailey is he's got so much speed and tenacity. Not that Bain doesn't have tenacity, but I'm just describing Bailey here. He's got so much speed and tenacity, and there's a lot of quick hand movements and just general drive, backside pursuit, all of that stuff. With Bain, when I say he's likely to destroy a gap, just completely set the edge, take somebody out of it, it's like he's got the Iron Man beam in his hands. He gets his hands on somebody, and sometimes they just fly backward off of him. And he's about 20 to 25 pounds heavier than David Bailey. David Bailey's not a small man. I want to emphasize this. He's still 6'4", 250. That's the same size as Micah Parsons. That's the same size as Will Anderson Jr. So he's got the size. Bain is just bigger. With that being said, Bain's impact might be a little more... He might have a little more impact on the team overall, whereas Bailey's going to have an impact in and of himself. Bain might take the tackle out of the play, and then again, you've got your safety coming down to fit the run, and it's a run stuff. With Bailey, he's just going to make the run stuff himself, or someone else is going to have to plug the gap and make the tackle there. Bailey's also, I want to make this clear, Bailey's also much faster than Reuben Bain. David Bailey's got like lightning in his heels. So it comes down to a certain degree, a matter of personal preference, a matter of fit with your scheme. But again, I'm still going through this process. But again, Mel Kiper Jr. has the Commanders taking Reuben Bain 7th overall in his latest and, well, first mock draft of the cycle. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this video today. I hope that you did enjoy. Whatever your thoughts are on anything that I said, make sure that you throw them down in the comment section below. Hit the like and the hype buttons if you did enjoy. Subscribe if you're new around here. I appreciate y'all joining me, and I will catch you in the next one. Have a great day.